There you go.
So
You're up.
let's call this meeting to order.
Nope, you don't have to second. I'll note who's present. And then first up is just the approval of the August 24th, 2022 meeting minutes.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're good there.
And then we just have a memo, if I can just refer everyone to page 2 of the memo. We just provide an update of some of the different conversations that we've been having, because there's been, in addition to vouchers where we left off, the charge was for us to go and meet with the city of Milwaukee and see if there could be a partnership of some sort developed. They are willing to administer housing vouchers for Shorewood, but they would like some additional coordination from their program manager. They also have hired someone, correct me if I'm wrong, well, they call it a navigator, but it's kind of, they hired a position to specifically strategize. This person just came on board, but their charge is to specifically strategize how to reach out to landlords in the city of Milwaukee and get them as participants in the project. What we're finding out, which I'm sure is not new news to some of the people in the room, is that you can fund vouchers, but you need to have places for people to go. And so we kind of run into a similar issue here in Shorewood. When talking with, whether it be the Fair Housing Council or with the city of Milwaukee, they're struggling with the same type of dynamics. So what the director kind of advised was, hey, we have this person on board. We could strategize together in terms of how to do this outreach and approach, because obviously he's in a larger department. He's in Hackham doing this citywide. So kind of taking a look at a model of how could that be applied here to Shorewood. But it doesn't seem that the housing voucher is really the hindering factor. It's really, how do you get landlords to accept those vouchers and move on? And that would ring true with kind of what our housing studies, which is, hey, Shorewood, you have affordable housing. It's just occupied by individuals who don't necessarily need affordable housing. So it provided a connection point there. You know, we had said to him, and I do think that there's a synergy of collaboration there, but they asked for a couple of months to actually have that person continue to acclimate themselves to their organization and then develop kind of what their strategy approach may be for the city and then meet with us. Also relayed just before that, you'll see that the city of Milwaukee, and this we touched on in a prior meeting, just increased the amount of what vouchers would cover for the village of Shorewood. So you actually see it on the third page of the next. So I just highlighted that as well, because it continues to be a strong topic of conversation, allows about our entrance point here to the municipality. Any questions on that before I move to foreclosed properties?
Let's say we proceed with the vouchers. But we have, I believe we have, I mean, it's pretty easy for us to figure out who our landlords are, right? Because we have a small village, we have a database. Let's say we have a landlord in the village who has a lot of property and is interested in participating, but because of past history with this landlord, we're leery of sending taxpayer money to that individual based upon past experience with other initiatives. Is that legal?
Yeah.
Is that legal? Can we discriminate? Would it be discriminatory, or would it? I can see this possibly coming forward. I would just like to have information now.
I mean, I'm not acting in my capacity as a lawyer. I would think there would be flexibility for the village to decide who it wanted to work with and who it didn't want to work with. I would think we would have standards, but I would think at the end of the day, it would be the village's discretion. Again, I'm not acting in my capacity as an attorney. And I think it would be probably, I think it would be up to us to decide who we wanted to work with. We didn't, if, for instance, if somebody was difficult to work with, we wouldn't have to say, we are going to try to make this work no matter what. Just say, no, you're difficult to work with, we're not gonna work with you, we're gonna work with these other landlords, so.
That passes a legitimate smell test.
It's not like a protected class thing
Yeah.
to work with.
And I think, looking at this, it says there's a lot of hurdles, so I think, any way we can get over those hurdles or anybody that's open to that, I think in the long run, it's all about the people trying to get, spaces in these places. And if, I think, Wes is right, we have to just kind of take it case by case, but I think we have to look at the end goal as if we're helping people, get into these spaces. I think that's the number one goal.
And we can ask that question when we get to the point where we could further explore it, particularly with their navigator and then with the city's program. From my understanding, Bart, you jump in if I'm incorrect, but people could be getting vouchers now to live here and we wouldn't even be engaged.
There are some.
Right. We wouldn't be engaged in the process at all, right? They would process them through their program. I think it's if we were gonna provide gap assistance, right? So let's say it's 1872, but the landlord needs 2,000 or whatever that is per month. Then, I would think that there would have to be some criteria that we could apply. What the criteria would look like, I'm not sure, but that's where I think the expertise of the navigator and the program would be helpful. Because I'm sure they've seen perhaps a situation like that before.
And I had another question. So thinking about, because we're seem to be just going down the voucher route. So one possible downside to this could be, like I have a friend who runs a nonprofit and she offered someone a $5,000 a year raise. And the employee said, I can't accept that because it makes my income so high, I'll lose my affordable care. And so I think that's a discussion that we all need to be aware of. We're saying, is there any way to make it so that maybe instead of like, well, I could get a raise at work, but it would knock me off my affordable housing voucher, so I can't take the raise at work. Right? Is that?
What are you asking?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's the
That's
question.
the goal for them to get a raise and make a livable wage and get off assistance.
Okay,
And if someone chooses not to do that, that's
their choice.
their choices, want to be on assistance, I would think, right? I mean, the whole goal, I think, is to get them to a position where they're offered a raise and get on their feet.
And then it's their choice if they want to stay with the voucher or get the better job or.
Well, I think the whole point is to give people a footing to move up. So if I don't think the goal is to keep people on the voucher program forever.
Okay.
Just a side note, I mean, I'm probably out of touch and things have changed a lot last year, but 1872 for a 3-bedroom seems generous. I mean,
Well, that's
think
why I keep bringing it up.
in terms
Yeah.
of like
That
getting
makes
landlords to buy into this and not having available spaces, I think if you put out there that with the village's top-up program, we would rent a 3-bedroom for 2,000. A lot of 3-bedrooms in this village are at a decade's old pricing, so people might be really inclined to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say especially, I mean, I don't know how many 3-bedrooms are in older buildings in Shorewood. I would guess just totally anecdotally, what I'm just watching the market, it seems like almost the vast majority of our duplexes and apartment communities are 1- and 2-bedroom homes, but
Well, then 1,600 for a 2-bedroom seems,
that's still pretty good.
you know,
Especially if it's hasn't been updated. I mean, and it's very nice, very livable, clean, but maybe it just doesn't have a brand new kitchen and brand new baths and everything, but it's still a very nice apartment with a garage and everything. That's good rent.
Yeah, did we get from our housing data what a 2-bedroom is renting for? Does anyone remember that? I'm sure we did get that number.
We did. It'd be almost 3 years old by now, and I don't have it offhand. I can look that up.
It's encouraging. It's not a
But
huge
either way,
gap.
those numbers that, to Joe's point, they look good. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't seem like they would scare anyone off other than someone who has like a very high-end property.
Yeah, and there's not a ton
Probably
of
not
talking
going to
up.
be looking at this program anyway. So those seem very
Have a
reasonable.
lot of-
I think that this is great. If you could stay, if we put $200 on that 2-bedroom and someone can get almost $1,700 for a 2-bedroom, that's an incentive.
And there's a
People,
lot of those in the village.
I think so. I think my neighbor gets $1,000 for a 2-bedroom. You know,
I think there's a lot of landlords who are individual, not the big people.
that's kind of my point, is I just think if I'm in my own rental property, if someone said, I'll give you $1,700 for a 2-bedroom, like, sign me up. I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
that helps get them over that hurdle that we're talking about.
And
Of
again,
unwillingness to participate.
I would say this is somewhat anecdotally, but I used to manage I don't manage any apartments in Shorewood anymore, but I used to not too long ago. And I would say Shorewood is somewhat unique in the investor mix that owns in Shorewood. They're not as interested in maximizing every dollar. People don't buy duplexes in Shorewood to make a lot of money. They buy duplexes in Shorewood because they are extremely stable,
Mhm.
virtually no risk. So that's why you see duplexes selling for $400,000 and rents of only $1,500 a month. Because I mean, if that was in River West or that was in South Milwaukee, like that would, the return would be not enough for investors. So I think there's a lot of investors who really probably would just value having a good, solid tenant that's going to stay there for 3-4 years. And they're getting a check from, I think this program, the whole check comes straight from the managing entity, correct?
Correct.
Yep, it's guaranteed.
Yeah, right. So I think we may actually have more luck with smaller individual landlords if you can get the word out and the education to them than the 4 or 5 landlords that own 200 units. Just my gut, but it's hard to say.
So I'm just gonna move on to the next update on foreclosed properties. So right now, Milwaukee County has connected with us because we have a property that's been foreclosed on Downer. And they shared with us their intentions to utilize a portion of the ARPA funding that came to Milwaukee County to actually rehabilitate tax foreclosed properties within the county to make them affordable to first-time home buyers. We only have one tax foreclosed property that's been in process for like years. So it's not a fast-moving process by any means. But they are going to be moving through the process of rehabilitating it with a program called Ezekiel Hope. So I believe that there are actually people within the prison system. They're still, I mean, I think they're, yeah, they teach them trades to do the job, or they have this skill set. And then they come under, or, come on site and do the work under the guidance of a contractor who's skilled and can offer training to do these things as a way to build skill set for when they are no longer there. So great property. During the course of those discussions, we also touched on community land trust, because I know that that's something or a topic that's come up with this group before. It requires administration and oversight. And so the county is going to start looking into community land trust. So part of our mindset was, oh, wouldn't this be great if the county could develop that administrative structure, and then we as communities could perhaps participate in that. Now that's a long way down the road, because they made very clear to us that they're going slow.
Does it stay on the tax roll? As a land trust, it does.
So I just wanted to let you know that, my calendar is marked so that we're reconnecting with this group to kind of get those updates. And so I just wanted to provide some information on that, what's going on in that area, which is newer because they have not done this type of a program for a while. It's modeled after something that started, I want to say, in 2015 through a different program and avenue. But So that's a possibility as we look to the future and what this looks like.
It's an interesting idea. It never occurred to me. I imagine it would be split on the tax roll. You'd have the land, someone paying taxes on the land and someone paying taxes on the improvement of the house. So it's a really interesting idea. But
Yeah, well, and it allows, I mean, I just think for communities where we're not the only ones who are small, you know, so as you look countywide and as they look at how to provide models for affordability throughout the county, that could be something, you know, that could be a win, right?
Well, also one more question.
Sure.
Foreclosed property, just for my education, who actually owns the tax foreclosed properties? Is it the state,
Now it is the county.
the county?
Yeah,
Is this the one south of the mobile station?
yes,
Did you say, and you mentioned one that was foreclosure for a long time. Is that a different one?
no, this
It's
is
all
all
the
this
same
one.
one. So we
Yeah,
just have the one right.
I feel like it's been going on for years,
That's what the problem is with I think the foreclosure.
just recently.
Is it
I think it's
empty?
just this last year, maybe.
It's
Yeah.
empty. It's empty.
All right,
So what would our role, is it too early to ask?
yes, yeah, because so primarily, you know, as we're well, you directed us to look at vouchers and we had that conversation. We're still trying to get up to speed because everyone seems to be at a new point, right? Where everyone's exploring it. It's just new blazed.
So like
Trails.
electric vehicles.
Yeah.
It's just like changing
How do we
so
want to
fast.
look at that? Okay. And then also new on the scene, economic mobility to Milwaukee suburbs. So as you'll recall, ARPA funding, the Milwaukee County had some of its ARPA funding delegated to assist with affordable housing. That division said, okay, they actually contracted with T. Whaley Smith, who's been here presenting to the group before. Oh, that's right. To administer the RFP process for them. So they have an application out that we've hyperlinked here. They take submissions once a month. And specifically looking for projects countywide that provide affordability. So that hit the streets probably a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
October 21st.
Oh, yeah. it could be. My weeks are sliding. So that's another opportunity for funding. At the same time, prior to the release of this grant, Three Leaf came back to us and said, hey, we're interested in submitting. Since that conversation and the release of the RFP, Three Leaf has noted to us that they're intending to apply on their project for a collaborative project between the county, the village, and themselves for purposes of looking at the Three Leaf development on Capitol and Stoll. So I don't have an application in hand at this time.
That's great news.
Yeah, so we're like internally, just know that we're gonna pivot when we receive that application, and then we're gonna start processing through that in accordance with policy 40. Now, policy 40 was really developed with the intent of people wanting to create tax incremental districts here and then, you know, work with that financing. But a lot of the all of the parameters still apply to how we would apply extension funds, because within policy 40, we talk about affordable housing, different benefits and such. So I linked that policy here to all of you again. That policy it's a very outlined project. That application comes in because the Three Leaf development has already gone through zoning review. What we would do typically with a new development when it would come in to begin with, our part of staff is kind of like, well, it's already it's approved, it's done. So now then what we would do when we get that application is we would send it off to Baker Tilly, who's our financial advisors. And then they're the ones charted out in the policy 40 project, policy 40 process to evaluate the financials in accordance with how the policy is laid out. So they review it for a week, they provide a report, we bundle that report in the application, and then we bring it back to you as a CDA. The CDA is then requested to make a recommendation to the board anything, right? But essentially, hey, village board, we recommend that you continue to pursue the application and take it to phase 2, or not recommend to the village board that happens. Then it goes to the village board. The village board says, yes or no to proceed, because it's developed into 2 phases. One, the first phase, initial review. And we did that strategically so that we wouldn't put someone through all these paces if there wasn't going to be an appetite really for what they were proposing. If it does pass after phase 1 and given the green light to go ahead, it's not guaranteed anything, but then they would step forth with the phase 2 proposal. Which again, then would come back to the CDA and then go to the board. With this, also recall that in that policy, we asked for the property owner to provide a communications plan in terms of how the information is being communicated to the public. We also say in that policy that we're going to push communication on that through all of our channels. How we would do it. We've been doing that with all of the developments as they've been going on. Like if you follow the village manager's memo, and I'm sure you all do.
Wait, expectantly.
I know you do.
Every whatever day comes out.
Milestones, sort of 4 different milestones. We've used it as the feature, to kind of say, hey, this application is coming to the planning commission or DRB, or hey, this is what's approved, to kind of just provide education of what's in our ordinances and the process that we go through. So one thing I will be doing after we conclude the meeting is just huddling with you to get some possible future dates, because this will move likely off the schedule of when we would normally meet. When I have more information in terms of when we anticipate submittal. So that's all the information I have at this time, but know that as staff we'll be pivoting to that direction.
So we have some experience with this with the light horse, right? Because that was the same model, except that was the beginning of a TID for number 4. And this would be using extension money. Is that some sort of a template that we could use in terms of how much money we have $2 million, right? And so until they complete their application, we don't know what they're asking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I guess what I'm saying is we have done this before, just in a different way. But it doesn't hinder us in any way from doing. We don't know if they'd be looking for something. The light horse was like 20 years, right? A subsidy for 20 years for 10 units or something like that.
It's 17 units. I think it's 15 years, but I could be wrong on both of those because I was not doing that.
Okay.
But to your point, the developer agreement for that would be a good model or template that could be used for such a request here with different parameters, obviously.
And using this process that we established that wasn't in place before.
What did they receive? Did they receive a loan that was paid back, or did they receive reduced property tax on the property?
For sure, they received TIF financing, so that,
Yeah.
but I don't know if they had a loan as well. Once again, that was done before either of our times. We don't know it that we're hand, but and they may have received funds for other things besides affordable housing on that project too. They might have received funds for the parking structure,
Well, they
etc.
have the build back community bonds.
Where were those
that
funds
happen.
come from? The CDA had them, or the village? 'Cause
They
that is
also
different from-
applied for a different bond structure that was available. It was, I forget what they called it, the build back. It was a federal program that released bond structure with a greater advantage.
Okay.
Yeah, that the developer also just went directly to get. But so each project is evaluated on its own merits because they're all inherently different, even though they provide affordable housing. So it could be a template, but as we look at it, we'll look at it like we'd consider each one on its merits. And that concludes the report.
Or did they, I'm sorry, do you know what level of where they are with the county on this? Is it the same as us?
But what they had voiced is that they intend to submit to the county and us at the same time.
What county program would that be?
So the county just released this RFP for, they call it economic mobility to Milwaukee
Oh,
suburbs.
okay, the one right above it.
Yep, and it's funded with ARPA funding. So the county set aside a particular portion of it. They have this pot to help fuel affordable housing in the county. And so when that came online, obviously, with most RFPs and grant programs that we look at with really any agency, they want them to be collaborative. Like they want to see support coming from multiple areas. is. So how that plays into the scoring of the county's application, I'm not sure. But if you do go to the site, you'll see their RFP, you know, what their process is. My understanding is that submissions happen like the first Friday of every month. So, you know, possible I could get something later today, but until I get it, I just, I'm not to speculate. Right. So that's what I know. Well, and Bart's been included too. It's just been a lot of talking to people. You know, a part of me, you know, after talking with the county, it was exciting to know that they have this navigator now, that they recognize that this was a need in their program.
That's the city.
Correct. So, but they did ask for time, which is normal. So just wanted to let you know that we'll continue to follow up on those opportunities as that time permits, but in the meantime, we'll go to pivot to this application. So for purposes of meetings, you know, as we move forward, I'll probably just be doing doodle polls with all of you once I know more from a timeline perspective.
Hey, Rebecca, did you say earlier that the county, they were asking for, when they say more time, it was like 2 to 3 month time frame? Is that kind of what you said?
Yes, I mean, in the call, he referenced, you know, early 2023, because their staff member, I think, was just hired 2 weeks before we had this conversation.
Okay,
So they were kind of inundated with just getting their feet wet, and they wanted time to, like, you know, understand Milwaukee's program and how that worked before taking the next step of strategizing how do we reach out even to our own constituents.
right.
Happens when I'm not typing. So that
Well,
concludes my
Thanks
report.
for the update. Does anyone else have any other discussions about that at the moment or anything else? Because I don't think there's anything else on the agenda after that, correct?
No. So thank you.
Yes,
for
I'm just
taking-
wondering, what do you see as the most time sensitive thing going forward? 3-leaf partners looking for financing or what? Is that like the most time sensitive decision we'll be facing?
Oh, for why we would meet next?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yep.
3-leaf.
Yeah, after
Going
going
in very broken ground, they're like, you know, so I would think that they would want their financing.
wrapped up soon,
Yeah.
right? So that's why I was kind of like, hey, if you hear from me, you know, if you could just, you know, respond back, you know, to those doodles, and I'll try to, of course, it's the first time using this process or policy, right? So we'll go through that together. So I'm excited to learn and engage. And
So 3-leaf knows that the city's got someone that they think they'll have online in 2023, right? The navigator.
the city of Milwaukee happened for the vouchers. Yes, they actually hired the person, but they need time in their organization before collaborating, I guess, further with us.
And those would kind of be separate things because
Yes,
3-leaf would be a willing landlord, obviously, because they would need people to fill those spaces. So we wouldn't have to attract 3-leaf because 3-leaf at that point would need people. So that's kind of 2 different paths there at the same time.
yes, great point.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in. I know it probably seems like it was a small update, but I felt that at a minimum, we should
Oh, it's great.
connect to kind of hear what we're
Positive.
doing on it, and then just what you can anticipate
You
next.
don't always have to have hour and a half meetings.
Thank you.
Minutes.
Yes.
So I think John's just gonna be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there,
Feel
but
better, John.
next time I won't be sick, hopefully.
Yeah.
Feel better.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Have a nice weekend, everybody.